Now, what is .NET? Right. So we have defined .NET in these 5 points. Right. So we can say that it is a software development framework. Right. So first one is it is a software development framework. Second one is it includes a library and a runtime environment. Right. Third one is it includes FCL, right? FCL means framework class library, right? Which provides user interface, database connectivity, cryptography, web development, and many more, right? Then the fourth one is it is executed in common language runtime, right? And the last one is it provides language interoperability, right? So we'll discuss these points one by one, right? So let's start. Our first point is it is a software development framework, right? So what is framework? First, you need to understand that what is framework. So if you want to do some application development, right? So the framework will give you all the required tools, right, to develop the application, right, inside a particular or a predefined frame, so that you can work inside that frame, so which is offered by Microsoft, right? So this framework is offered by Microsoft, so it is called .NET framework, right? So in this with the help of this framework, we can create various type of application. The most basic application is console application, right? You know, console application, the application which runs in black window, right? So you have created C++ programs, right, which also runs in the console, right? You can also create GUI application. GUI means graphical user interface application, such as Windows application, right, web applications, mobile applications, and many more. Many more means uh, many more means you can also create services like web services, WCF, right, Windows Component Foundation service, right, web APIs. You can create web APIs, right? You can create web application. Web application includes ASP.NET, right, MVC, right, Silverlight, or even you can create your own customized libraries as well, so that you can use these libraries later on, right? You can reuse these libraries later on as well, right? So it is a software development framework. Second one is it includes a library and a runtime environment, right? So which means, so if you want to write a basic program, right, so you want something that is predefined, right? So in this .NET programming, we are not going to start everything from scratch, right? So if you want to if you want to print a particular message in a screen, right, so you will get a particular predefined method in which you will put that message within a bracket, right? So that so this predefined things will be provided by the library, right? So which is called the framework class library, right? So we'll explain this in later slide, right? So let me let me go through once again, right? So if you want to write a message, right, if you want to print a message, then in this .NET programming, you will get a predefined method, or you will get a predefined libraries for doing a particular task, right? So if you write some program, right, so if you are done with writing the program, then what is your next goal? Your next goal is to see the output of that program, right, by running the program, right? So for executing the written program, we have something in .NET which is called runtime environment. So for execution, we will go to the runtime environment, right? So it is clear that first you have first you will write the program, then your next goal is to check the output. So for executing to checking the output, we will have a runtime environment, right? So this framework consists of the predefined libraries as well as runtime environment, right? So if we explain the library in detail, it is called FCL, right? Keep in mind it is called FCL, Framework Class Library, right? Now next is FCL. So FCL provides user interface, database connectivity, cryptography, web development, and many more. Many more means even you can create the services like web services, WCF, web APIs, mobile application. Even you can create a cloud application, right? So you can do many tasks with the help of FCL. So FCL helps you for different purpose of application, because it provides us the tool, the required classes, the required method, right? So that we can write a particular code for that type of development, right? For example, if you want to develop something in web, right? Something for web means if you want to create a web application or website, right? So you require a particular code or particular class or particular tool for web development. In the same way, if you want to create the Windows application, so there are different set of classes, different set of libraries, different set of methods for Windows development, right? So if you want to create a mobile application, you will have the different set of classes, methods, tools, libraries for mobile, right? If you want to create a database driven application, you will have the related libraries for the database connectivity, right? So FCL helps you to provide the various tools, classes, methods, and libraries for particular type of development, right? So after you run this type of various application, this all can be done with the help of CLR, Common Language Runtime. So the next one is .NET programs are executed in CLR, Common Language Runtime, right? So we know the runtime, right? Now what is this common language, right? So for finding the answer, let's jump to the next point. The next point is it provide language interoperability, right? So the common language is related to it provides the language interoperability. Means for writing a program, you need a programming language for .NET, right? So in .NET we have multiple options uh, for writing a program. So in .NET we can integrate any language. We can have more than 60 languages, right? Out of which 11 are designed and developed by Microsoft, which I have already discussed in the first lecture. So multiple option may be C Sharp, or you can use VB.NET or Python or C++ or any other language which is provided by common language infrastructure. So these languages which supports the .NET framework is provided by common language infrastructure. Understand? Let me clear once again that the language which is supported by .NET. Don't confuse, .NET is not a language, it is a framework, right? Which supports multiple languages. So we can use either C# as a language, we can use either VB as a language, we can use either Python, you can use C++, right? which is provided by common language infrastructure. So these language is provided by common language infrastructure, right? So we can write our code in different language, but during its execution, what happened? During its execution, it will be execute in a common platform, which is possible by CLR. So it is called language interoperable, right? Means for example, there are for example, let's say in a company there are 10 developers, right, who are working in a same project, right, of this .NET, right? So means 5 of them prefer C# as a language, 1 of them prefer VB. So we can divide this problem into modules, right? So after integrating, after executing, it will be execute in a common language runtime. Means it will execute in common language, so it is called language interoperable, right? So it is a common language runtime, right? So it is clear. Now move on to the next slide. In this slide we have the different framework versions, right? .NET framework versions and its CLR versions and the IDE, right? So we have discussed the IDE in our previous lecture. IDE is Integrated Development Environment, which provide us a environment for writing your code. It provide us tools. It provides us rich user interface, rich tools for creating UIs, right? So the first framework version is 1.0, the CLR version is also 1.0, and the IDE is Visual Studio .NET 2002. Right. The second framework version is 1.1, CLR version is 1.1, and the IDE is 2003, Visual Studio .NET 2003. Then move on to the recent versions. We have the versions 2.0 to 4.0, then up to 4.8, right? From 4.0, the CLR version is 4, right? And the IDE is 2008, 2010, 2012, 13, 15, up to the current Visual Studio IDE is Visual Studio 2019. So these earlier versions are compatible with the newer ones, so there is a backward compatibility of these versions, right? So if you have written any program or any code for the development in Visual Studio 2010, then it will work in Visual Studio 2013, 2015, 2017 and 19 as well. So backward compatibility is there in this IDE, right? So if you see the newer version of these frameworks, they are giving us the new features like this. If we see the .NET framework stack, right? So in this stack, the starting with the lower version 2.0 will have the CLR, will have the framework class library, we will have WinForms. So WinForms is used to create a Windows application, right? Windows application in GUI mode, right? Then the next one is ASP.NET. ASP.NET is used to create web application, web apps, right? EDO.NET is used for creating the database driven application, database driven applications, right? Move on to the next version 3.0. We will have WPF, right? It is the advanced version of the Windows application. We can also create Windows application in WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation. WPF, the full form of WPF is Windows Presentation Foundation. And the next one is WCF. WCF, we can see WCF as a web services, right? Which is called Windows Component Foundation, right? Then the next, the one is this WF, Workflow Foundation, and Card Space. It is used for identity purpose. Do not go in these topics. All right. Then the next one is LINQ, right? Language Integrated Query, and the Entity Framework. So these two are the alternative to ADO.NET, right? If you want to use the database, you can use LINQ and Entity Framework, right? The Entity Framework is also, we can say that it is a object relational mapper. Means it will break your code into two layers: data access layer and business logic layer, right? We'll discuss it later on, right? Then we will do, then in the 4.0 version we will have the parallel programming, right? And in the improvement of the latest 4.5 version, we will have asynchronous programming and APIs for the Windows Store, right? So these frameworks and the new versions are giving us the new features like this. Now, what are the advantages of .NET Framework? So the first advantage is it supports object-oriented programming, right? The earlier version like Visual Studio 6.0, it does not support the object-oriented features. Then the later version supports the object-oriented programming, because it is a C# and C# is a pure .NET, C# .NET is a pure object-oriented programming language, right? We have the language independence. Language independence means the language in which you are comfortable, you can choose that particular language, right? If you are comfortable in C#, you can choose C#. If you are comfortable in VB, you can choose VB. If you are comfortable in C++, you can choose C++, right? Any language. More than we can have more than 60 language support in .NET, but the basic one is C# and VB. You will also use C#. MC, MSc IT, and BCA students use C# and BSc IT students use VB, right, for creating the applications. Then the next one is efficient data access, right? So for data access, we can have ADO, ActiveX data objects, right? The traditional approach, right? And the advanced version, we have LINQ, language integrated query, and the entity framework. Right. So entity framework, we can say that it is a object relational mapper, right? The entity framework creates the classes automatically of your database, right, and break into two different layers, right? The next advantage is code sharing, right? Code sharing means the reusability of code. Means you create a library, and we can and it will be shared by the various application. Means then the later lecture, we have creating a class component library, in which you will create libraries. You will put some methods in it, and you will access those method in application. You will reuse that methods in applications, right? So code sharing is there. Now the last one is support for services. So we will have WCF, the alternative approach of web services, the Windows Component Foundation. So these all are the advantages of .NET Framework, right? So that's all for this today's video, right? So we'll do some more this theoretical aspects in the later lectures, right? So thank you.